Now, from a mental health standpoint too, would you agree that running helps from a mental health perspective? Does it help you find your center at times?
Simsation Nation.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Simsation Nation. I am happy to talk about the subject of running. Now, while I don't really love running, I don't hate running either. So it's kind of like a love-hate relationship. I am not the greatest runner in the world, but I tell you what, after I take a run, I feel like I am centered again. I feel like I found my peace again. So I know it's one of those things that I cannot live without, but I don't love it either. Like, oh my God, I can't take a run, but I kind of do. It's kind of a weird relationship. I love running. And so when I wanted to bring somebody on to talk about just the subject of running as a whole, and I was thinking for literally only about 5 seconds, and it hit me right away. My good friend, Amy Natalini, who is the supreme allied runner of the world is what I'm going to call her. I just made that up right now. So I will tell you, I met her in Africa while I was deployed, and she kicked our butts. She led the running club there, and I just felt so subpar. And I just said, if I could just keep her in my eyesight as she continues to run way, way ahead of the crowd, I would be satisfied. And I was extremely happy with that. But she kept us in such great shape, and I am very thankful for it. And I will tell you, ever since then, I've been trying my best to really stay in tip top shape. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, my good friend, Amy Natalini.
Hi, thanks, Henry.
Yeah, listen. So, this is going to be really fun to talk about, first of all, because one, I am only about an hour away from Boston right now. But two, I see that you're wearing a sweatshirt that says Boston. So I'm only going to assume, rightfully so, that you ran the Boston Marathon. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely accurate. 6 days ago.
Nice. How you feeling?
I feel great, which is amazing, right? Because you put your body through so much, over 26.2 miles. And I came out of that race feeling much, much better than I have in a really long time, which I'm
Nice.
thankful for.
Nice. Well, I tell you, I'm going to go ahead and confess right here on my very own podcast. I have not run a full marathon yet in my entire life. I guess I'm just afraid. So you you got to give me some encouraging words to make sure I can do that.
Oh, in the next hour, I will change your mind.
I've done a couple of halves and things like that, but full, I'm like, oof, that's a good little bit of distance. So, with that, we'll talk about how you did it at Boston Marathon here in a second, but can you tell the audience like how did you get started with running?
Okay, so I've talked about this a couple times on a couple different podcasts, and the story doesn't ever change. So it's really funny when people ask me that. I actually started running when I was in fifth grade. I had a teacher, Mr. Roy Brown, who would take us all outside, not during recess, but like during class time, and he'd run these relay races. And it was the most important thing to him. He had a classroom full of Boston Marathon bibs, like lining the walls of his classroom. And I always thought, I really want to be like that. Never ran professionally, never ran collegiately. It was always just a hobby of mine until we got back from Africa. And then I started getting serious about it. And I kind of just asked myself, like, what if I could be better? What if I could get faster? And I hired a coach. She got me through a couple races. I did get faster. I actually ended up running at the 7th CISM World Military Games in China in 2019, right before the whole world shut down. And that to this day is still my best time from 2019. But I think I live into it every day. Hopefully it stays that way, but we can talk a little bit about some of the setbacks I've had kind of over the last year and how I have overcome those to get back on the right path.
Your setbacks are probably dreams for everybody else. You know, we're just you so I think you said Coach Roy Brown was the name.
That was my fifth grade teacher. He's
Fifth
still in
grade.
to me today. He's still lives out near kind of where my parents are, and they stay in touch. And I've stayed in touch with him over the years, and he's just been a huge inspiration for me.
Nice, nice. So that kind of takes us to, your history as far as, how you got started, how long it's been. So fifth grade. So I've seen some social media pictures of your beautiful daughter who apparently is also having an affinity for running as well. So yours started around the fifth grade. How long ago did it start for your daughter?
She started her run streak, I think, when she was in second grade.
Wow.
Yeah, she was running every day, and then my husband and I. You want to talk about passion, right? There's this very fine line between um, parental love and you have kids too,
Hmm.
you can't crush them with your passion. They have to kind of find it for themselves. So while she'll still go out and run and, here and there put in the miles, her real passion lies in dance,
Oh.
which is so nice because they're so related. And I love that she loves dance and she uses running to keep her very strong. She has
Well,
very strong legs.
wow. Both of those things will definitely keep you in shape, running and or dancing. I actually believe they'll probably benefit each other. So that's pretty awesome. So she's got a role model. She's watching her parents who are doing it. So I think that's amazing. So still walking you down this memory lane thing. When was your very first marathon, whether it be half or full? Do you recall that?
Uh, oh, I think my first full was I was in college. I think I was a senior in college. So what is that, 2002, 2003 timeframe? And I ran a full marathon. Couldn't walk for days afterwards. It was awful. I don't even remember why we ended up signing up in the first place. Not well trained. Probably thought as an obstacle to overcome, right? A one and done type thing. And I think I got done and I can remember thinking to myself, like, that did not go as well as I wanted it to. So, like, I think I can do better. And that's what started us down this road of having this true love for marathon running.
How many do you think you've done? Which is probably going to tie into, you talked about your coach and all the bibs and all the medals and all the other stuff. I would imagine you've probably surpassed him by now. So do you have a general ballpark of how many you've run and approximately how many bibs and medals and all that stuff you have?
I've done 63 full marathons. I actually recounted the other day because I thought I had done 65, but I think I overcounted. So don't question my integrity right off. Uh, Countless half marathons. I don't know, 10Ks, 5Ks. You kind of got to pull me out of bed for a 5K anytime, right? Because I'm not a fast runner.
What?
Not a fast runner.
I beg to differ. I beg to differ.
I would much rather just go out and keep that consistent pace at a little bit slower over the longer distance. But you know,
Okay.
10Ks, 5Ks, and halves, and then around 60 to 65 full marathons. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. That is insane. Insane in a good way. I need to step it up. Matter of fact, I need to stretch right after this podcast, and I'm gonna go out there and get me some miles in. So let me ask you, that's a lot of miles, a lot of marathons, halves, 10Ks, 5Ks. And for people that are listening and or watching, they may go, "Wow, that's like mind blowing," right? Now, does that level of running, does it have a negative impact on your body at some point? And if so, how do you mitigate that?
It does. So let's go into story time a little bit, and
Okay.
we'll talk about the last year and what happened over the last year. So I have to take it back to about 2019 when I was training for the World Military Games. It's kind of the equivalent to like the military Olympics, where they have about 75 countries send teams to an Olympic type venue. In this case, it was in Wuhan, China. It was right before COVID happened. The Iranians were there, the North Koreans were there, all the European countries were there, Americans, Canadians, Mexicans. And that is where I was training to really run my best race. And I did. It was
Hmm.
amazing. And I wanted to keep that same level of fitness without kind of regressing. And a lot of people will tell you, yeah, but you need to take a break, right? I didn't want to take that break. I wanted to just keep building on that success that I had found in running in China. And so I kept on. And, you're running 65, 70, 75 miles a week. The body can't handle that
Hmm.
over periods of time. Sure, it's fine for a little while. And, even the pros will tell you they're running 100 to 120 miles a week. But then after a race, they're going to take, 3-4 weeks of downtime. I didn't do that. So we get to Berlin in 2021, and my body is tired. It's very tired. I get through Berlin. It wasn't a great performance. I blamed it on the weather. I could have blamed it on a couple other things. Not great nutrition, travel. We had just PCS'd over the summer. So that's a pretty high toll stress wise. And so we went into the winter, and I was like, well, I feel like I could have done even better in Berlin. I need to keep training, and I need to keep training at that high level without taking any kind of break. So I kept going. And about January, February timeframe of 2022, my legs were to the point where they just didn't want to function anymore. And I'd gone out on a morning run, and I tripped and I fell,
Mm.
and I pulled my hamstring pretty badly. And what did I do? I'll just run through it. It's fine. I can overcome this. I'll just run through it. So I did. And then we get to the summer. And that's when not just my legs were starting to break down, but then my whole body started to break down. So I was having trouble sleeping. I was tired all the time. I would start a race, and I'd start a run, just an easy run in general. I would start, and I would be wheezing because I wasn't getting enough oxygen into my body. And so I had to go see a hematologist. The hematologist referred me to the oncologist, who said, I really think we need to do a couple tests and make sure you don't have blood cancer.
Mm.
It was the most nerve-wracking 8 weeks of my life to think that I had been performing at this amazing level, 18 months prior. And now I could be so sick that I might not run ever again at the same levels that I had been running at. So, we did the bone biopsy. 8 weeks later, came back. The doctor was like, okay, you don't have cancer. It's going to be okay. We'll do some blood transfusions, get your iron levels back up, which has helped tremendously. And all that to just say, people, you have to listen to your body.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
As, pro-am athletes, we should know better, right? We should know our bodies best.
Right.
There's this social stigma that I think we see some of these people on social media or on the news that are performing at such high levels, but we don't realize that's their full-time job.
Yep.
They are working out all hours of the day, but they also have personal chefs, personal trainers, masseuses. They have their own doctors, people that can tell them when to sleep, what to eat, and as a person that has a full-time job in the military, I don't get that. I wish I did.
There's a lot of lessons to be learned there from, honestly. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned there from trying to be like the folks we see on social media and not knowing the behind the scenes of all the work that's taking place that we don't even see. Like we see those people perform on tracks or, on fields or on courts or whatever. And we just automatically assume that we can do that. And you're exactly right. Like there's so much other work that goes into that. And you talked about nutrition. What is your diet like, or what kind of diet do you recommend for folks that are trying to work their way up to your status?
I will say, I'm older. I'm not going to say a number.
You're more seasoned. That's all.
Right. When I first started running, it was about dieting and trying to keep, body weight low. There's physics involved, right? The lighter you are, the faster you are, because you don't have to move as much mass. As I've grown into being a better runner that wants to run longer throughout my life, I've gotten to the point where I don't follow a specific diet other than let's not do processed food. So I try and stay away from a lot of Fast food, don't do any fast food. And then like boxed frozen food, I don't really eat any of that, but like whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. I don't eat a lot of red meat, but it's typically pretty healthy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that kind of helps, I would imagine, with like the physical aspect of yeah, you talked about the physics. There's definitely some physics involved with that. Now from a mental health standpoint too, would you agree that running helps from a mental health perspective? Does it help you find your center at times?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely it does. And there's two ways to think about that. On the one hand, I love to go out, and even just this morning, I went out and ran for about an hour by myself, and I get to think about things, hard problems, big questions that I'm wrestling with. I tell people I'm pretty sure I could solve the world's problems in an hour run, but by the time I get back and shower, I've forgotten everything. On the flip side, right, you have the resiliency of running community. And so meeting up with friends and having a network and being able to talk about everything while you're out on a run, we call it the run vault. It's kind of the circle of trust that you have
Of course.
between that small group of people that
Provided they can keep up with you.
they can beat me any day.
Nice. So listen, 60 plus runs. Um, you've done the Boston Marathon recently. What would you say if you had to think back, or maybe not so far back? What was your most favorite run and why?
Okay, so you're going to love me for this because this is how I'm going to convince you to run your first marathon. Okay. I have been running for the Air Force Marathon team for almost 10 years, and our favorite competition to go to is the Marine Corps Marathon.
Oh, simplify. Let's go.
It's such a well-run race, right? They've been doing it for 75 years, I believe. So they have experience. The crowd is amazing. There's 48,000 runners that go and do it. That's the reason they call it the People's Marathon.
Mm,
Uh, you run through the nation's capital and you see all the monuments, very inspiring. And then when you're done, you cross the finish line and a Marine hands you your medal, puts it around your neck for you. So
very nice.
it's a great experience. And then there's definitely that patriotism, right? I mean, there is, I think it's mile 16 where you're about to hit the wall, and they have put up a blue mile and they've lined the entire mile from 16 to 17 of portraits of people who have passed in wars. And
Oh, wow.
yes, sometimes they'll get the spouses and the kids to come out and stand out there, and they'll give you high fives, and it's overwhelming. I've found myself the last couple times just kind of, you know, tears coming down
Mm,
because it is truly amazing, not only to have the reminder that you're honoring these people while you're out on the course, but also to have their families out there supporting you as a runner. That's really great.
wow. Wow.
If I
That's
recommend a race to you, it would definitely be that one.
listen, you're doing a good job of trying to motivate me to do a full. I tell you what, that sounds amazing actually, and it's for a good cause and a good purpose to it. Kind of remotivates you, it sounds like. So we
Yep.
talk 5Ks and 10Ks and half marathons, which are 13 plus miles, full marathons, 26 plus miles. Um, I was going to ask you the longest run you've ever done, but let me ask you, have you run longer than a full marathon? Have you done like 100 mile or an ultra or Ironman or anything like that?
I've done one ultra. It was
And what
50,
what what, what does an ultra consist of?
is anything over a marathon.
Okay.
50K, which would be about what, 31 miles. I did the Selma to Montgomery race, which it was the week that basically that the world shut down. And I had been training for it. And it's the same route that Martin Luther King took from Selma, Alabama. You cross over the Pettus Bridge, and
Hmm.
they marched to Montgomery to the Capitol steps. And I ran that route, and it meant a lot to me because we had been stationed there for 2 years, and I really was kind of steeped in at the moment, Black Lives Matter and a lot of different justice movements that were coming out of that. And it meant a lot to me to be able to kind of trace those footsteps
Mm.
for those 50 miles. There have been people that have done it on a bike. There have been people that do it as a relay. I wanted to do it by myself. And I had a great group of friends that supported me and came out and ran with me, but I covered the entire distance.
Oh my gosh. Listen, not only do you do a lot of great runs, but it sounds like you do a lot of meaningful runs, which is like the best of both worlds, man. I bet that had to be absolutely amazing. And running in Alabama and all the humidity, I'm sure, is something to adjust yourself to. But at the same time, running in Africa with you, man, oh my gosh, that was like someone having a blow dryer, in your face while you're trying to run. So, what is your preference, or do you have one? Do you prefer to run in warmer weather, colder weather? What's your preference?
I'm not a fan of the cold. I grew up in Michigan, and you would think, Michigan girl, she's fine in the cold, but anything under about 35, 38 degrees, I'm not a fan of. If you could put me in the heat, I thrive in the heat. I truly do. So, um,
Likewise, likewise. That's just my day to day life. Listen, cold weather, not a thing for me. I prefer hot weather. Give me the humidity, give me the hot weather all the time. I'm like you. I feel like I can thrive. Most people will say, well, you know what? If you're cold, you can put on layers and you can get warm, but you can't do that in the heat. But I don't care. I just like warm. I like warm weather. So what about entertainment? Are you kind of like, because we take those morning runs and you said you could solve the world's problems in an hour, because there is some greatness into being able to just think and hear in the silence while you run and just think about great ideas and all that other good stuff. But when you're doing like competitive things like 10Ks and 5Ks and halves and fulls, do you prefer music or no music?
oh, I have some music for sure. Um, I just updated my playlist for Boston for last week. Lots of Post Malone. um, and like some fun techno like David Guetta. It's hard on bigger courses like Chicago Marathon, New York Marathon, Boston Marathon. The crowd support is so great, and we tell people, sometimes you can't hear your music. The crowds are so loud.
Nice.
But there are moments where the crowds kind of dissipate or there's a lull and you need a little pick me up. So I'm a huge fan of music. When I'm running with friends and we're out and chatting, I typically don't bring music, but
I see. Now let's talk about, because we have varying audience members, whether they're viewing or watching. Someone may look at this and go, perfect. I'm on the right track. I just need to improve a little bit, or she's kicking my butt, or, yep, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And some may go, you know what? I've never run anything past 1 mile in my life. Now we can talk to people like the beginners who maybe want to work their way up. What type of gear would you advise to folks that are literally just kind of getting started? What gear should they go out and get?
so you cannot go wrong by investing in good running shoes. I don't want you going to Walmart and buying shoes.
Yeah,
Uh, I always tell people if they ask, go to a specialty running store, get fitted for the proper shoe. The people there know what they're talking about. They have a lot of experience. Sometimes the specialty running stores are a little bit more expensive. If your wallet can handle that, that's awesome. Definitely, support local business.
right.
I heartedly agree with that. If your wallet can't support it, you can always go on Amazon, search for the shoe that they recommended to you, and probably pay a little bit less.
Okay.
Uh, I like telling people the story of the first time I was shooting to break 3 hours in the marathon. Uh, I didn't believe personally that I had earned the right to wear the fast Nike shoes, right? This is right when carbon plated shoes were coming out. And I told myself, you're not fast enough to wear those. You're not buying those. So I was wearing kind of like the lower end Nikes, and I broke 3 hours in the marathon. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go buy these shoes. They were $250.
Mm.
It was like shocking, right? Like, who's paying $250? I mean, okay, yes, Air Jordans, I get it. Some other types of shoes that are very expensive. But those at the time, those were the most expensive running shoes on the market. And I had to walk outside and like take 3 deep breaths because I was like having buyer's remorse for buying this expensive pair of running shoes. Now, you can get anything from the $80 shoes, which are still pretty substantial, all the way up to, your Highline $300 racers that
Hmm.
the pros are wearing. And
Nice.
I think that they're just going to get more expensive because people are going to pay for
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. That's good. So, what I'm hearing is that number one, if your wallet can handle it, try to go out and get some shoes that are actually going to be form fitting and that works for your foot type. And go into a store to do that if you can. Otherwise, there's probably some mid-range shoes that may be a little more affordable. But yeah, trying to run for the first time or run a longer distance than you're used to running off of some low brand, low budget shoes is probably not recommended, is what I'm hearing.
No, shoes probably the most important. Your feet are going to be your most important asset when you're running, because everything's connected. So it starts in the feet, and then your form and your efficiency are going to go from there. So if you start having ankle problems because your shoes don't fit properly, that's going to affect your calves, which start affecting your knees all the way up to your hips. So
Mm-hmm.
better to just invest in some good shoes. There's no shortcuts. There was a time when I was a broke college student where I tried to buy little kids' shoes because my feet could fit. Don't do that. I weigh more than a little kid, so even if they fit, they don't have the amount of support that you probably need as an adult to run
Oh,
in.
that's valid advice because just because they're the same length for your foot, they may not necessarily have the same amount of support that you might need. See, that's good advice right there. So here we are. We have worked our way up to your most recent run at the infamous, or in some people's words, infamous, or the famous Boston Marathon. How are you feeling? How'd you do?
I feel amazing. I actually beat my fastest Boston Marathon time. So it's not my overall personal best, but on that course, I beat my time by about 2 minutes, which was phenomenal. After last year, um, it was definitely in question about how this race would even go, if it would even happen, really, right? I I had a run streak, Henry. I ran every single day for 5 years. And then at the Chicago Marathon last year, I tried to run. I shouldn't have tried to run. I sprained my foot.
Hmm.
So I had to stop my run streak and had to take some pretty significant downtime. So I took until the end of the year, and then I started probably my best ever marathon build, my smartest ever marathon build. And it took me 3.5 months. And the best advice I can give to anyone who, whether you're starting out or you've been running for 10, 15, 20 years, is run where you're at. Meet yourself where you are at and not where you want to be. It was very humbling for me I wasn't starting from scratch, but I was starting very, very low on the totem pole. And I knew where I wanted to be, but I couldn't get there overnight. And so having the patience and the maturity to actually meet yourself where you are at and not where you want to be, that helped tremendously in getting me to where I was on that course on Monday.
Nice. This is the mic drop moment. You killed this interview. Like I just feel like this is going to help a lot of people because the beauty of this interview is you're not necessarily out there going, "Hey, look at what I've done," but you're highlighting what you've done and the right way to do it. And I think that's going to help some people in the future. So I appreciate you sharing everything that you have. But before I let you go, I like to end every single interview with my 10 question speed round of what do you prefer? Probably not even related to the subject that we're talking about, but that's okay. So I'm gonna hit you with a couple of questions. First question: when it comes to pizza, if you eat it, do you prefer fruit on your pizza or no fruit on your
No
pizza?
fruit. No fruit. No.
These are some controversial questions that I've collected along the way. So you mentioned from a shoe perspective, you mentioned the Michael Jordan's name earlier. Basketball greatness: Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
Michael Jordan.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Now, books. You and I talked before we started recording with the courses that you and I have taken before. After a while, you want to go, "Hey, I don't want to read anymore for a while." Now, when it comes to books, though, do you prefer audio books or paperback or hardcover books?
Oh man. That's not an either or question. I prefer hard copy because I like to write in them, even if they're nonfiction or fiction. I'll be
Okay. This is probably a question that I probably shouldn't even ask because I think I know. Um, gym days or working out, whatever you want to call it. Do you prefer leg days or arm days?
every day is leg day.
Every day is leg day. Not for me. You should see my legs. With your diet and the way you run, you may not even partake. So none of the above is okay too. With your libations, are you a cocktail person or are you a glass of wine kind of person?
Glass of wine, red wine all the way.
Nice. Communication. Send me a text because I'm like, why are you calling me kind of thing? Or don't text me. I need to hear your voice.
I want to hear your voice.
Okay. Traveling. Road trip or take a flight. And you can even add, well, actually, the distances that you run, they're probably just as long as a road trip. So I don't know. Would you rather take a road trip or take a flight?
With my luck on flights, I'd rather take a road trip.
Okay. All right. So when you put on your attire, do you prefer like a t-shirt or are you kind of like, let me put on a nice business type of shirt?
I'm a runner, Henry.
Sweatshirts, t-shirts.
Sweatshirts and running shorts all day.
There you go. Heroes, Superman or Iron Man?
Superman, classic.
Okay. Now, this one's probably another question that I probably know the answer to with the fact that you run a lot. Your music, do you prefer digital music or, hey, you're like, I want to hear some vinyl?
Depends on my mood, but for the majority of my running, obviously it'll be digital.
Okay. Well, thank you for playing the
And in my skipping CDs.
there probably was a time where people were running Boston marathons with those big CD players and carrying them on their hips. So now Apple Watch, that's all you need.
Right, that's right.
So thanks for playing our 10-second round. But before I close this out here, I want to say thank you, number one, for sharing your stories, motivating and encouraging folks to get out there and run and take care of themselves, whether it's mentally, physically, taking care of your diet and just doing things the right way. Any last minute advice you want to leave for the viewers out there?
I guess I will just finish with probably the biggest cliche, but the one that I believe in the most is life is a marathon. And you don't want to be hitting that wall when you're at mile 16. So you're in it for the long haul.
Nice. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here, the Supreme Allied Runner. I just coined that on this podcast. My good friend, Amy Natalini. Amy, thanks for joining us on Simsation Nation. Until next time, I'm out.